Hi and welcome to this new video, and in this video we're going to look at how you learn to fly with a higher camera angle, and I'm going to basically go through why this is a difficult transition for many pilots and how you can make it easier. And it's down to a couple of things. One is it's down to what you get used to seeing when you're learning to fly, and it's also down to becoming dependent at lower camera angles on throttle rather than pitch and elevator. So let's start with the habit side of it first. So if you're used to flying, and if I've got my angle here set at 30 degrees, if you're used to flying at this sort of angle, then when you're flying around you will have got used to the quad looking down at the ground, and I'll demonstrate that. So as we fly this quad around, you'll notice that in general, I appear to be looking down at the ground as I'm flying. If you look at where the horizon is, you'll see that it's really quite high up the screen. And that's because in order to fly fast at a 30-degree camera angle, I've got to look at the ground in order to get the nose of the quad down to stop it from climbing all the time. If I flatten out, I climb, as you can see. So I have to look down towards the ground, and the faster I fly, the more I've got to look at the ground. And this becomes a habit. It becomes, well, when I'm flying, and I'm flying quickly, the quad is angled down and I look down at the ground. You can see that the horizon is way up the screen here as I'm flying around this course. The horizon line in the distance there, sometimes it's even, the horizon isn't even visible in my view, it's actually gone off the screen. Okay, so that's the first problem, is we need to break that particular habit, because when you start to raise your camera angle, so if we go up to, we'll go up to say 50 degrees. When we go up to 50 degrees, if I fly around this course again with a 50-degree angle, you'll see that the horizon is not way up the top of the screen anymore. It's actually more in the center, and in fact a lot of the time it will probably be below the middle of the screen. So let's just take a look at that. Okay, so you can see there that the horizon is no longer disappearing out the top of the screen. A lot of time it was around the middle of the screen. If I go even higher on my camera angle, so now let's go up to 60 degrees. Oops. This is really quite a high camera angle. I don't recommend that this is particularly the kind of angle you want to be heading for racing. 45 to 55 degrees, somewhere in that range is normally a good range for racing on Velocitron, depending on the track. 60 is kind of heading into some of the angles I would run for certain types of freestyle manoeuvres. And freestyle flying, I know some pilots do run at 60 degrees for racing. It's a bit too high for me. So if we run at 60 degrees, you'll see that the horizon now is starting to appear below the midpoint on the screen. We're starting to get into a situation at times where that horizon line is actually below the midpoint of the screen. And you'll notice that I'm very rarely looking down anymore. I'm just looking out into the distance at the horizon as to where I'm going. The habit of looking down at the track is completely non-existent at this high camera angle. You cannot afford to be looking down. And actually this is where that habit of looking down becomes a problem, because if you start trying to look down, you just fly straight into the ground. And it doesn't actually matter, even if you're at full throttle, you're still going to fly, if you look down, straight the ground, even if you look down very slightly. So the first thing is to break that habit of looking down and start thinking about looking into the distance and having the horizon line around the center of the screen. So that's job number one. Now job number two I'm going to demonstrate, which is a change in the way in which you control the height of your quad. So when you're at 30 degrees, a lot of the changes that you make to where your quad is positioned vertically is done on the throttle. You tend to kind of look down, that's the one thing, in order to stop yourself from climbing too much. But to get under things, you tend to drop the throttle, and if you want to climb up for something, then you tend to open the throttle in order to do that. So a lot of your flying is done on throttle dependency. You know, if I want to come over this tree, I'm going to use throttle to go over it. Then I'm going to control my descent with throttle when I come down the other side. I'm not really doing very much on the elevator or the pitch stick in order to do that flying. Now, if I change now and change up to, say, a 60-degree angle, what you'll see now is that in order to fly up over here, I actually have to pull back on the stick in order to climb. Because if the horizon's in the middle and I just open the throttle, you can see I just go faster. I don't climb, I just go faster. So the only way I can climb is by pulling back. Let's just get back into the viewable area. So the only way I can really climb is by pulling back on the stick in order to do so. So I'm now becoming more sensitive to having to use pitch to control what's going on with my quad. So if I'm to fly through this area here, for instance, and hug the ground, and then come over the top of these trees, I'm going to have to fly it more on this right hand stick here, this right hand stick, and my left hand stick is really just how fast I'm flying. It's nothing to do with the height, it's just to do with how fast I'm flying. So this is the big change when flying at a low camera angle versus a high camera angle, because when you're flying at a low camera angle, the throttle can do a lot of this stuff. This height control stuff is purely done in the throttle. If I want to go over that, I just throttle up. And if I want to go over this, I just throttle up and I go over it. But at 60 degrees, that's just not going to happen. You know, if I want to come down, I close the throttle to drop underneath things. Now, at 60 degrees, this isn't how things work at all. At 60 degrees, once I'm in forward flight, you know, opening the throttle is really doing nothing for me. It's not giving me a height change at all. I'm sure I can still drop down by cutting the throttle, but as you can see, it's not really giving me much ability to climb, to go over things. So if I want to go over things, I've now got to start using my elevator more. So flying at this higher camera angle is really about using the throttle much less to control my height, and using the elevator here, or the pitch stick, to control, you know, if I want to go down, then I can pitch down. If I want to go up, I can pitch up. So I'm using elevator or the pitch stick much more to control the attitude of the quad, and keeping the horizon actually towards the middle of the screen. Now if I want to fly slowly at a high camera angle, what you'll see here is if I want to just kind of float around and fly very slowly through this gate, see how I'm having to look up in the sky pretty much. The horizon is pretty much you know, almost out of sight, almost off the bottom of the screen in order to fly slowly. You can fly slowly like this, but you're now looking up instead of looking down. So the whole world is reversed effectively in terms of your habit. Your habit is now to look up, to fly around and not hit the ground, rather than to look down in order to control your height and stop flying off into outer space. So this is how flying at a high camera angle kind of changes what you're doing on the sticks. You have much more to do on your elevator to control height and much less to do on the throttle in order to control your height. Okay, so that's pretty much what I wanted to cover, to explain how you switch. And as I say, it's two things that you've got to change. One thing is you've got to break the habit of looking at the ground, which you've learned from flying with a 30-degree angle, and the other is learning to use the pitch or the elevator stick more to control your height, and to be less dependent on the throttle stick to control your height, because at higher camera angles throttle equals speed, not height change. Okay, that's it. I'll see you on the next video.